Is it even allowed to do like a wrap-up video when you're like a month behind? But you know what? I'm gonna do it anyway. I'm going to do it. So this is my December wrap-up. I read 3 books, even though one of those books I technically did finish, or I read most of it beginning of January. So, oh well. But you know what? This is a winter wrap-up. Kind of qualifies. So I picked up these 3 books from the works around about kind of October time, and I thought these look like cute little cozy mysteries and they're set at Christmas time. I think I'm gonna enjoy them. I did not enjoy them. I didn't get off to the best start, I'll be honest, because the first book that I read was Murder at the Theatre Royal by Ada Moncrief. Now, I ended up with 2 books by Ada Moncrief because there wasn't that many Christmas looking mysteries. So when I saw another one by her, I was like, great, 2 by the same author. But then I read the first one and I was like, oh no. I'll read the summary to you and then I will get into my thoughts, my feelings, and my ratings. Christmas 1935. Director Chester Harrison's new production of A Christmas Carol has been on a troubled tour of regional theatres. With tensions amongst the cast running high, the play has at last reached its final stop, London's Theatre Royal, a few days before Christmas. Catastrophe, however, strikes before opening night. Scrooge dies on stage, seemingly due to a heart attack, but the show must go on. Until that is, an old rival of Chester's is murdered in a dressing room. Are those associated with the play being picked off one by one? Journalist Daphne King is determined to reveal the truth. This got off to a really slow start, and that's what slowed me down in December, because I had plans to read all 3 of these books and I also wanted to read A Christmas Carol. But this book took up the most of December because it was a slog. Like, I went into these thinking, I think they'll be quite like a cozy read. Like, you know, I could cozy up with a Christmas blanket and just sit and like listen to some like little cutesy little instrumental Christmas carols, stuff like that, have a little cup of hot chocolate. It's a cold day outside and I'ma just sit down and read my book, light a candle. But no, this book sucked the soul and the life out of me. The pacing was just so slow. It was so boring. Nothing really happened. And you know how it said, like, so Scrooge did die very quickly. So like we got introduced to Daphne like straight away. She went off to she was going to do a piece on the production. So she met up with the cast and the director, and then while she was there, when they were doing a rehearsal, that's when Scrooge died. And it was a very common case of the police came along and they were like, looks like a heart attack to me. And then our girl Daphne went back and did a little bit of snooping, and she found mushrooms in, I forgot his real name, but Scrooge's dressing room. She found mushrooms in a sandwich and she was able to identify the mushroom as being poisonous. She knew exactly what it was. She told the police officer, who already knew her because she'd already helped him to solve a case in another story, which isn't actually a real story, because I genuinely thought that I was like missing a book. I was like, oh, this is a series. But no, this is the first one. This was the first one. And they kept referencing this other mystery that she'd solved and helped the police with. And I was like, okay. And the police inspector was like, well, I'll be damned, Daphne. You're right, girl. Slay. And I was like, oh, here we go, like incompetent police. And the whole time, they did nothing. They did absolutely nothing. She was solving everything. It became a little bit stupid, a little bit far-fetched. I didn't really care for many of the characters. They were all very sort of one note, very kind of caricature-ish. Daphne was running around trying to solve this mystery. She found like she found postcards that had been sent to, have they been sent to Scrooge or have they been sent to Chester? I can't remember. I think Chester was getting like weird gifts. So like somebody had it out for him and she was kind of looking into them, and all the postcards had been hand delivered and they all appeared at the theatre wherever they were performing. So she knew it was somebody that had beef with them but also was able to travel, apart from one postcard which got posted, and that was because the person obviously couldn't make it to the performance. And she went to the town where the postcard had been like postmarked, or where it had been sent from, and she walked into the post office and asked the lady if she knew who could possibly have sent this postcard. And the post lady was like, Are you taking the piss? Are you chatting shit? Like, of course I don't know. And then the post lady, like, they were talking about Christmas, and then she mentioned about how she was going up to the old folks home for like, was it a party, or were they going to like volunteer, or there was something. And then our main character was like, oh my god, that's why the person was here who sent the postcards. She was at the old folks home. And I'm like, there could be plenty of reasons why this person was in this town. But then it turned out, oh yes, of course they were visiting the person. They were visiting somebody in the elderly care home. And of course, as well, Daphne went a little wander around the grounds. She found the mushrooms. Why the person, the murderer was picking the mushrooms all the way back in whenever that postcard was sent, and was carrying them around to someday make up a sandwich. It was a bit stupid. Then as well, I suddenly realised that when it says, until that is an old rival of Chester's is murdered in a dressing room, are those associated with the play being picked off one by one? He didn't die until we didn't meet him until halfway through the book. And then he died at like the 3/4 mark. So I was waiting all along for this guy to appear and then die. And when he did finally show up, I was like, oh, that's him. And then he died. And I was like, okay. That it was just, I don't know, it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. It was very slow paced. Even though I wanted a sort of cozy paced book, it was so much slower than I thought. Nothing really happened. It wasn't fun or cozy. The mystery ended up, or the reasons that the killer had, all ended up being like details that we weren't told until Daphne was doing her grand reveal, when she had like a pure Jessica Fletcher moment and summoned all the suspects into one room and whittled her way through them all and was like, it could be you, and I know it wasn't. It could have been you, but it wasn't. And then she finally revealed like what happened and all that stuff. And it was information that we couldn't possibly been given. And she was doing stuff. I remember she was looking at a photograph. She was looking at a photograph of Chester, Scrooge, and the old rival of Chester's, because the three of them had been friends years ago, and there was a photo of them standing in front of a bar, and she whipped out a magnifying glass and she was able to see a pen in the bar staff's pocket that was like behind the bar. And this book was set in the 30s. This photo must have been taken in at least the 20s, or at most the 20s, I should say. It could even have been in the 10s. And like, you mean to tell me the quality of that camera, the photograph, was so good, you were able to whip out a magnifying glass and you could see a pen in the pocket of the bar staff who's behind the bar that the people are then standing in front of? No, absolutely not. It got stupid. It was too stupid for me. I think I gave it 3 stars in the end, because I was like, meh, I don't really like giving 2 stars unless a book is absolutely trash. But I gave it 3 stars because I was like, okay, not what I wanted, not quite. Slowed my reading down because I didn't enjoy it and I didn't care. And I didn't like Daphne King either. The way she spoke, oh my god, she did my head in. She constantly let people talk over her. And I know sometimes like that like, I'm like that. I'm quite shy in real life. So if people are talking, I will shy away and I will let them do the talking first. And then I'll say my piece. So I get that, I do get it. But from a book's perspective, I hate it when a character is so shy, they're getting talked over all the time. She was trying to tell people, no, you don't understand, Scrooge has been murdered. And then in the end, because everybody kept talking over her, and they talked over her for like half an hour, she eventually screamed, he was murdered! And it was so stupid. Like, it was dumb. It was dumb. So I didn't enjoy Ada's first book, so I was really apprehensive about reading her second, so I broke the two up by reading The Christmas Murder Games. Now, this book, I read the summary and I was like, this sounds good. And it was. And I gave it 5 stars. But looking back now, I think I would like to reduce my rating to maybe even a 3.5, maybe a 4. 3.5 feels a bit stingy, but maybe a 4. But I'll read the summary to you and then I'll kind of tell you what happened. 12 clues. 12 keys, 12 days of Christmas, but who will survive until 12th night? Spoiler, absolutely nobody survived in this book. Lily Armitage is lured back to her grand family home, Endgame House, after receiving an enigmatic letter from her aunt urging her to take part in an annual tradition, the Christmas game. The challenge, solve 12 clues to find 12 keys. The prize, the deeds to the manor house. Lily has no desire to return to the place where her mother died 21 Christmases ago, but her aunt makes a promise. The clues will also reveal her killer. Desperate for the truth, Lily starts to unravel the riddles alongside her estranged cousins. However, it quickly becomes clear that each has their own reason for wanting the house, and not all of them are playing fair. I gave this book 5 stars, and my reason was because while I was reading it, I blasted through it. I was enjoying it. Like, I really wanted to know who did kill her mum, because everybody thought that it was suicide, and they all so we were like, oh, somebody killed her mum. And then obviously things were just going on. You were starting to think like, okay, there's a killer among us. Who is it? I kept this at a 5-star rating because when I finished it, even though I was a bit like, I felt like I enjoyed myself while I was reading it. I was gripped the whole way from like almost start to finish. I was excited. I was like, oh, I was buzzing. So I thought, you know what? I enjoyed myself while I was reading this book. Whereas with like Murder at the Theatre Royal, I did not enjoy myself. But I enjoyed myself while I was reading this book. So I gave it 5 stars because I thought, isn't that the whole point of reading? Is to like, you read because you enjoy it. So I really enjoyed myself reading this, but sadly, I think looking back, I feel like it was completely unhinged. Like, I sort of don't really want to give spoilers, but I also want to give spoilers because this was just, oh my god, I don't even know where to begin. Full spoilers everywhere. Full steam ahead on the spoiler train. Every character in this was a bit flat. There's a running theme here. They were very flat. There was like Sarah, who was a complete and utter bitch, like an absolute bitch, and I'm surprised nobody exploded on her because she was saying some really nasty and hurtful things, really mean, and I'm like, you're just letting this girl get away with this, like family or not, she's a cunt. Then there was her brother Gray, who was like just clearly troubled with a capital T. He was not well, that man. He was not well, and I was like, he's seen some shit in his life. But in a way, I feel like we didn't really know why he was troubled. He didn't really know anything that I can remember. It's been a while. It's been a month. It actually only has been a month. Oh wow. Christmas feels like a lifetime ago. I don't know about you, but it does to me. Our main character Lily ended up getting raised with Sarah and Gray because their mum was Liliana. Lillian? Lillian. I could never pronounce that one either. Whatever. But she was raised with them after her mum died when she was 12. And yeah, Sarah was a bitch and Gray was just troubled. He was just a little sad boy. Then there was her other cousin Rachel, who had she had a wife called Holly, and together they had a daughter, but the daughter was not at the house. But it was crazy because it was like her daughter's first Christmas. Not only was she not at the house, because clearly only adults were invited, they were missing their first Christmas with their child to try and like play this game. And apparently they used to play this game every year, so obviously they all lived in this big they would all come and visit this big manor house. Lily did live there with her mum and her granny, but then her granny had passed away because Lily's mum was like the heir to the house because she was the oldest sibling. The house being called Endgame House really threw me because they were supposed to have owned the house. I tried to do the math, but they roughly owned it from like, I think it said before World War II. So kind of like late 30s, or maybe it was after World War II, so it was kind of like late 40s. So I'm like, they took over this house and they named it Endgame House. Endgame. I hated it. I hate the phrase endgame. I only like endgame when I think of like in the Avengers movie. I hate the term endgame. Like, I remember it was in like Riverdale and stuff like that. If you'd be like, we're endgame. I hate that. But I hated that as the name of the house. It bugged me. It bugged me so much. Like, who calls their house Endgame? The family loved to play games, if you couldn't tell. And so like every Christmas, they would all come together at Endgame House. Lillian, whatever her name was, would create this game where there was like riddles and clues to solve, and that would lead them to the Christmas presents, and whoever found them first got like the big prize that was there. So say like, I mean, in our day and age, it'd be like a new iPhone or an Xbox or whatever. Then they could all open their other presents. And every year, apparently, Lily was like super good at solving them, but she was always beaten to the big prize by Sarah because Sarah would basically like tag along or like follow her and then shove her out of the way to get her prize. Which is, again, we've got another soft character on our hands. I hate a softie. I'm a softie at heart. I am a softie. So I hate reading about softies because I'm like, bitch, you should have grabbed her by her hair and yanked her away from your guest because you solved the clues. I did not know how this book was going to play out as I was reading it because the game kicked off on Christmas Day. Everybody got their clues. They were all like, so the house was empty. Oh, I didn't even finish all the family that was there. Sarah and Gray, Rachel and her wife Holly, because you are allowed to bring your significant other if you had one and they could like help you. Then there was, what was his name? Ronnie and his wife Philippa. And then there was also Tom. Ronnie and Tom were brothers. Sarah and Gray, brother and sister. Rachel was also... Wait, the family tree's at the front. Why am I not just looking at the family tree? I think Rachel might have been... Was she on her own? So there's Tom, there's Rachel, and there's Ronnie. Rachel's married to Holly. Ronnie is married to Philippa. They three are siblings. Sarah and Gray are siblings. Lily's on her own. Anyways. So... Oh, it's quite windy looking out there. That's everybody. That's 6. So the 6 people playing the game plus 2 extra that are partners. Christmas Day came around, like, they all got a present, and in their present there was, like, clues. As per our girl Lily managed to solve it. She found the very first key, because that's what it was. They were fighting keys. They were told by... So Liliana died. That's why they were kind of all summoned here. And Lily got a letter from her being like, if you're reading this, I am dead. And the way that it was planned was there was like 12 keys. So every single day you would find a key. And at the end of the game, there was going to be like, you had to find a secret room. And one of the keys would like open the door. And then whoever got there first would win the deeds to the house. Now Lily didn't care about winning the deeds to the house because the house was like haunted to her. Like because her mum died in the maze. In the middle of the night, so after Christmas Day has passed, I can't remember. Lily did find the first key. And I think she had it or she gave it to Tom. Her and Tom decided to work together. Sarah was kind of trying to follow her again. But they were all useless. Everybody else was useless. They were all running around in the wrong place looking for the key. It kind of gave away like a sort of semi-obvious answer. But she was like, she went into a completely different place than them. Like reading between the lines and saying this and look at this bit of code and why would you say that? The rest of them were useless. Like, I knew straight away none of these people deserve the deeds to this house. They're useless. They can't even play this game. In the middle of the night after Christmas, so in like the early hours of Boxing Day, like very late in the night, somebody is killed in the library. Or were they in the library? Or were they in the hallway? I think they were found in the hallway. They'd been dragged. They'd been stabbed. And I was like, ooh, here we go. We are getting competitive. What did they know? Like, what's the tea here? And at first I was like, interesting, there's a killer among us. Now, they were all snowed in because there was a bad storm. The manor house was in the middle of nowhere. There had been a tree had fallen down, that was blocking the roads. None of the cars had their batteries in them, so someone had stolen all the car batteries. So they were trapped. There was no way of contacting the police because the landline cable had come down. It was shambles. So they all knew that they were trapped in this house with a killer. Could have been one of them. It could have been like somebody else, like a secret. And when I tell you that they all bounced back real quick on Boxing Day morning to try and solve the next series of clues when they came out, I was like, oh, what? It was so crazy. Like I've not really been around death in my life. I couldn't imagine what I would be like if I was in a situation where someone had been killed in the same house as me. I now have nowhere to go. I'm stuck in this house and I just keep calm and carry on like nothing's happened. It was unhinged. So then they all went about and they like were solving more clues. Once again, everybody else was absolutely useless. I don't really want to tell you. I mean, it doesn't really matter if I tell you who gets killed, but I'm not going to tell you anyway. Somebody that was close to the person that was killed sort of like faded away, drifted out, like spent all day in bed, was not well, was grieving as a sane person should. And then they died as well. They were killed too. And it was another one of those things where I felt like every single time in this book, somebody would say to Lily, I know something that you need to know. Come and find me later on. Tell me now. Tell me right here, right now, what you know. I hate that in books. I hate that in movies. Because every single time that trope happens, oh my god, the person always ends up dying or something happens to them and they decide not to tell the main character. Like, what? What do you mean, come and see me later? And then they died. Oh, no. I was raging. Then there was an attempt on a life in the maze. And our girl Lily kind of stumbled upon it, saved their life basically, got them back to the house. I can't remember if it was before or after that, but a couple, I mean, there's only two here that you can actually choose from, but one of the couples decided, this is game over for me. No, we cannot risk our safety. We have kids. They skedaddled, and that was one of the things. Because Lillian had set rules in place. She had a solicitor who was a sort of childhood friend of Lily's that kind of set up the game before everybody arrived, and then she left. So she left them in the house, but she was like, we have cameras, I think outside, or did they have cameras inside? I think they had cameras outside. And there was also a housekeeper. A housekeeper lived in the house with them. She was preparing all the meals. She would present everybody with their clues. Like, she had strict instructions of what to do every single day. So like one of the days, I think the clue was in crackers, so she had to hand out all the crackers, those kind of things. So there was a housekeeper on site that was basically in charge, but they'd been given strict instructions that they were not allowed to leave the house at all, or they'd forfeit and they would lose their right to the deed to the house. Like if there was any cheating going on, or if anybody left, that was it, you were banned. And I think it was supposed to be the housekeeper, who's called Mrs. Castle, was sort of like feeding info. Like she had her own phone. They all had to give up their like devices, so like phones, tablets, laptops, so that there was like no cheating going on, and so that they couldn't communicate with anybody. But Mrs. Castle had a phone that she could then contact Isabel on. Isabel with this lawyer. Did I say her name? I don't know. So yeah, two of the characters, a couple, decided enough is enough. They skedaddled. I think they said they were going for help, but in the end they left a note with Mrs. Castle to say like, we're done. They left a note for Lily being like, we're done. So they skedaddle. So by that point, this is gonna, well, I mean, it's a half spot. There is only two couples, so one gets killed, one couple gets killed, the other one skedaddles. So at this point, there's Lily, there's Gray, there's Sarah, and Tom are left. The days are going on, and they're still solving their clues. Then we have a moment when Gray is getting even more like unhinged as the time is going on. It's one of those characters where he clearly knows stuff and he's very deeply troubled by it, but his sister is always there and always speaking for him and always speaking over him and won't allow anyone to speak to him. He then comes to Lily at one point and he's like, meet me out at the old chapel. I need to tell you something. What happens? She gets there and he's dead. He's dead. So by this point, in this house, not including Mrs. Castle, there's Lily, there's Sarah, and there's Tom. And I'm like, well, it has to be Sarah the bitch. She has proven time after time after time that she's determined to get the deeds to this house. She wants to turn it into like, does she want to bulldoze it? Or she wants to turn it into a hotel. She just wants it to make money, basically. She really doesn't care what happens to it. So the three of them sort of are like, let's stick together on this because something is afoot. Now all this time Lily's been working alongside Tom, and so the three of them sort of like, Sarah just couples up with them. Couples up's not the word to use. Well, she just teams up with them. Like they don't even get, like I say, she's just there. And she is now kind of broken off and she's gone unhinged because obviously that was her little brother who died. And it was so stupid, the way that then just the last little bit just panned out, because why Lily wasn't more concerned that literally everybody has been picked off or chased away one by one. There's now three of them left. She knows she's not the killer, and the chances of there being somebody else in the house, now there could have been. She had a couple of ideas of people that she thought perhaps could be lurking and could wish them harm. So there could have been somebody else, another suspect, but like the fact that she wasn't more concerned that she was with potentially two murderers or like a murderer. The tomfoolery. We get to 12th night, miraculously. That is the last one, yeah. People have died up until that. And they know that the clue's in the nursery, or the key's in the nursery, and she's trying to find it. Sarah's just unhinged. And she's like dancing around the room and she's trying to dance with Tom. And then she just starts blurting out things and she's like holding on to Tom and just saying all this random stuff. Meanwhile, Lily's just looking at them like, the f. She already knew though that at some point in the book, Sarah had a little bit of alone time with somebody else in the house. Now, there was only two people in that house that she, apart from Mrs. Castle, that she wasn't related to. So take from that what you will. One of whom was actually they were both girls. One was Holly and one was Philippa. the wives of their cousins. We knew Holly was a lesbian, but Philippa was married to a man. So Lily thought it was Holly. But no, it wasn't. Turns out she was shagging her cousin. I was like, ugh! They're full cousins. Full cousins. This isn't no like half or third cousins. Like, I know in like the olden days and like Pride and Prejudice, like people would marry their cousins. The royal family is like, the history of it is full of cousins marrying cousins. In this day and age, to marry a to have relations with a first cousin? Your parents are siblings. No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And the way that it was just sort of said in a sort of acknowledged in a line and then instantly moved on. I was like, girl, are we not disgusted by this? Are we not enraged? Like, ew. Ew. Anyway, Sarah is going full on unhinged, manhandling Tom, starts blurting out all this stuff about, but I did it for us. I did it for us. Oh, bleh. So it was so silly. It was really sad. I actually didn't like the way it all then came out, that rather than Lily like discovering something and turning around and being like, I know it was you. I know you did it. And here's how I know. It just became Sarah having a bit of a mentee bee and just being a bit like unhinged and just being like, I did it for us. I killed them. I did it. What? And then there was some silly stuff where Tom was a counselor. And he kept trying to counsel everybody. And it was the way that he was like turning to Lily and being like, she thinks I'm grey. She thinks she's talking to Grey. It's her subconscious talking. It's this, it's that. She's not really talking to me. And Lily just doesn't buy it. Lily's like, Anyway, at some point, there is a gun. I think Sarah had it, or Tom did. I don't know. Sarah gets shot. Oh my god. I am just full spoilers everywhere. Full steam ahead on the spoiler train. Sarah gets shot. Tom turns out, yup, they've been having relations, but also like they were planning together to like find the key, win the deeds to the house, and live happily ever after, I guess, with all their money. But they knew that they needed Lily, so like Tom kind of tagged along with Lily, and that's how he's been getting keys. And they all knew that Lily had no interest in the house. She only wanted to solve the mystery about her mum. So she was willy-nilly like giving away the keys that she kept finding, which was dumb. Like, honestly, even if you didn't like the house, you could have still sold it. Like, God, think of the coin. So then it got a bit silly. They were still looking for the last key. It wasn't in the nursery. He's wandering around with a gun. He's looking. My man was pure, like, then they had to find the secret room, which was like a different clue on its own. He was wandering around with a hammer, hacking at the walls, trying to find like this secret door. I was like, what is going on here? What? So then it all kind of became a bit like Lily was wandering around. She managed to like solve the clue. None of the keys were actually real keys. The key was actually a song, and when she sang the song, she won. Isabel like appeared through the wall. She'd been living in the house all along, like a little ghost, just living in like secret rooms and stuff. She came out and she said, congratulations, you won. Tom appeared with his gun, and Mrs. Castle pulled out the Glock, and she pew 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 pew. So then Tom was dead, and I was just like, everyone that started this game is dead. Lily is the only one alive. And here was the crazy part. Lily was pregnant all along, right? And she wore this like brace to kind of like suck in her stomach so that nobody would know. But it turned out, because she was technically the heir to the manor house, like the very start of the games, she got to sign a contract that was like I hand over my rights so that whoever won the game could then inherit the house. And then Isabel had made a comment, when they were talking about it before Isabel left, apart from she was in the walls, she made this comment to her about how like the contract would be void if she was pregnant when she signed it, which she was. So the house went to her anyway. The house would have been hers. She signed it away, but the house was technically still hers because she was pregnant, but also she won the game. Also, everybody else was dead. It was a wild ride, I must say. It was bonkers. Some people think I'm bonkers, but I just think I'm free. It was insane. And I'm sorry I've just spoiled it all for you, but it was insane. They all died. Oh wait, no, that's a lie, because obviously the two that skedaddled are still alive. They were fine. I wondered if maybe it was a lie and they were actually dead too and they were like buried somewhere. But it was insane, and the way that they just kept piling the dead bodies like into this ice house that they had outside to keep them fresh, when they were like, well, the police can't come. It was, oh my god, it was so unhinged. But like I say, I was enjoying it while I was reading it for the most part. And that's why I gave it 5 stars. But then once I finished it, and I think I took a moment to sit and really think, I was like, what the actual hell was that? It was insane. I'm also not good with riddles, so I didn't really enjoy it. I mean, the character explained them relatively well, but even then, no. And then the last book that I read that, as I say, I started at end of December, but it carried on into January, and I finished in January, and it was the other book by Ada Moncrief, and it was almost as bad as the first one, if not worse. Christmas Eve, 1938. The Westbury family and assorted friends have gathered for another legendary celebration at their beautiful country house. The champagne flows, the silverware sparkles, and upstairs the rooms are ready for their occupants. But one bed will lie empty that night. On Christmas morning, David Campbell Scott is found dead in the snow. There's a pistol beside him and only one set of footprints. Yet something doesn't seem right to amateur sleuth Hugh Gaveston. Campbell Scott had just returned from overseas with untold wealth. Why would he kill himself? Hugh sets out to investigate. Oh my god, the characters in this were unbearable. They were so one note. The 3 Westerbury children, so there was... It started with an L. It started with an L. What was her name? What the hell was her name? Lydia! It was Lydia. I knew it started with an L. It was Lydia who was the eldest, Stephen, and then Edward. Eddie. Eddie was a bit of a recluse. He was very quiet. Lydia was very outspoken, very much a kind of trying to be an Elizabeth Bennet type person, acted like she never wanted a man, would never marry. And then there was Stephen, who obviously was gonna, even though he was the middle child, he was gonna inherit the house once their family died, or once their parents died, or their dad anyway. There was Lord and Lady Westbury. Lord Westbury was kind of starting to lose his marbles a little bit. He's going a little bit senile. And they were having, people around for Christmas. And to me, it was a bit wild because I thought maybe it was like a gathering of friends. There was Hugh, who was like, his parents died when he was young and they kind of took him in and semi-raised him, but he had his own wealth, so he had his own house. But, he still came around quite a bit. Then there was Freddie. Freddie was sort of the same. His parents were gone. He was struggling. He had been wealthy, but he was struggling. He was an alcoholic. So that was fine. That's like a couple of boys that you sort of helped raise when their parents died. Then there was obviously David Campbell Scott, who was like a friend of Lord Westbury. There was this couple, Rosalind, and her husband, whose name I have forgotten. Can't remember their surnames. I'm not going looking up. But there was a couple, and she was friendly. I think it was Rosalind. She was friendly with Lady Westbury, so I think that's why they were invited. Then there was a politician, just a random politician. He was like whatever he was. He wanted to be Prime Minister someday. And I can't for the life of me remember what his name was either. I think that was everybody. It just was like a random group. Like, they invited this random politician to Christmas. And like, he arrived on Christmas Eve and was staying until the 27th. And I'm like, this is what people did? Like, they invited random people to spend Christmas with them? Wild to me. Absolutely wild concept. It was a very, very, very slow-paced book. Like, I was a bit disappointed that nothing really happened, like, at all. The guy died, and Hugh was a bit suspicious, but then he had nothing to go on. Like, the man was found with a pistol beside his head, like, suicide. They call the police detective out. He comes, he's like, yeah, it's suicide. Hugh's a bit like, why would you do this though? Like, why would you come for Christmas and then kill yourself? It doesn't make sense. Nobody really believes him, so he starts kind of conducting his own little mystery. And I'll tell you what I didn't like very quickly. If a character is like conducting their own little mystery, so they're going around and they're questioning people subtly. Like, I love a Jessica Fletcher Murder, She Wrote mystery. The way she just goes around and she like questions folk, and they will tell her all sorts, and she will get all the clues, and she will have her eureka moment and discover who the killer is. Love it. Chef's kiss, cannot be beaten. That's my favourite show ever. Hugh was rubbish at that. Hugh had a little book that he was writing his theories into, and it was found by Stephen, who like read out to everybody, so they all knew that he thought somebody was killed, and he was investigating it. And then every time he tried to talk to somebody, it was never done privately. Like he tried talking to Rosalind and was like, so how did you know David Campbell Scott? Like, how did you know David? And she was telling a story, and everybody heard it. Everybody stopped their conversations, turned around and was looking. And he was like, oh, our conversation isn't private. Oops. Everybody knew everything that was going on and everything that Hugh was doing. And I didn't really like that. Like, it sort of took that element away of like, oh, nobody suspects. Like, they're all feeling very much at ease. And they were still very much at ease, considering he was, cutting about. No, it wasn't for me. Same as like Murder at the Theatre Royal. It just was lacking. It had such a slow pace. And I was like, I felt like I was reading it. I was trying my hardest to get through it. I was like, nothing is happening. It's just such a slog. Then they had the Boxing Day shooting, so they were going to be shooting just clay pigeon shooting. They did that in the Christmas murder game. I think they were actually going to be going shooting properly with like real birds. And there was like a little bit of a moment. Freddie had a bit of a breakdown, and then they all decide, you know what, actually, it is in bad taste to go shooting after a man has just committed suicide by shooting himself in the head. I was honestly really hoping that somebody was going to die at the shooting. Like, I thought, oh, there's going to be like a little bit of scandal. Somebody was accidentally shot, you know, another little body turning up. But no, everybody was fine. Everybody survived. And once again, like, I felt like the mystery ended up being something that you couldn't solve on your own, because Hugh then went off. He caught a train on the 27th, early morning, like, went and saw like a friend, got him to do a little bit of digging, and then he managed to come back and be like, you're the killer, and I know why. And I was like, bruh, you didn't even give me any of this information. Like, what? It was a slog. It was boring. The mystery wasn't even that interesting. I was just meh. So I think I gave it 3 stars again. So it was 2 3 stars and a 5 star, but the 5 star kind of deserved to be a 4 star because it was a little bit bleh, bit unhinged. But they were all, it was like boring, unhinged. And so I'm really disappointed that I did enjoy the Christmas murder game, as I say, at the time when I was reading it, but looking back, I'm like, none of them actually did well for my expectations. I'm disappointed. I wanted to enjoy them. I wanted them to be good, but yeah. So that's the books. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I shall see you in the next one, whatever that may be. And oh my goodness me, these books, I swear. Please let me read something good.